Right, we're entering into phase 3 of the Ergogenics discussion, and then we're looking now at body processes to optimize. So what we're looking at here, fuel and energy use, so substrate use, energy balance, the role of insulin, carbohydrate loading, carbohydrate cycling, fueling plans, feeding patterns, time restricted eating, and then how this ties into the anabolic catabolic seesaw, which relates to enzymes mTOR, AMPK, and also the SERT genes. This will affect body composition. This will affect metabolic flexibility, so the individual's ability to use fat for fuel efficiently, muscle protein synthesis, maximizing power to weight ratio, and ultimately maximum repair and recovery. So I think when we're building programs like this, we have to think about the foundations, intensification of dietary protocols, which is basically just supplementation, and then ergogenic aids on top. One way we can think about this is taking a normal item such as carbohydrates and then looking at how that might be faster absorbed, i.e. cyclic dextrin with a faster gastric emptying profile, and how that might benefit the athlete in terms of carbohydrate replenishment, either during activity or directly post activity. So really 5 key areas: carb cycling, insulin sensitivity, insulin mimicking nutrients, sometimes called glucose disposal agents, nutrient partitioning is another concept, around time restricted feeding, and anabolic catabolic processes, and of course metabolic flexibility. And a couple of examples there that popped up in the top left corner about how carbohydrate cycling might help. I popularised that concept within Premiership Rugby along with sports nutrition generally in the 2000s. I was the only nutritionist travelling to all the clubs to begin with, so I was the one that instigated protocols at every one of the Premiership Rugby clubs during that time. So in order to understand where we're going with all this, we need to think about a blank sheet of paper, but actually energy availability in relation to how much ATP you can generate in a short amount of time. And that's what it's all about: ATP, energy currency of the cell, survival currency. The faster you can replenish that, the faster you can produce that, the more likely you are to survive as an animal, survive on the pitch, survive in the ring. And you can see here creatine phosphate, anaerobic glycolysis, carbohydrate dependent, produces lactate, aerobic glycolysis, carbohydrate dependent, and then moving into aerobic lipolysis, fat burning. So systems won't obviously be working all on their own. There's just going to be a massive crossover. So all systems need to be optimally supported, optimally trained, and optimally replenished at the right time. So we're always wanted to deliver safe and effective sports nutrition advice. So a lot of the coaching will evolve around establishing a carbohydrate sweet spot, and then that means gathering information, doesn't it? So as with all these things, you start with a sweet spot template. You measure, you adjust, you improve, you recalculate need based on all your performance feedback. Most people listening to this may not be working at the highest level, so what we'll be talking about is how do you apply the elite level protocols to the average Joe. And actually in my mind that's just as important as getting it right at the elite level, because really recreational athletes, as I said before, have as much fun supporting them as I do the elites. Within the sporting context, you will have a given level of philosophy around performance supplementation, usually driven by the head coach, looking at how skeptical people are, what's the compliance within the structure you're working within. But really what we need to look at is with the average Joe, you're looking at mostly food with one or two special additions, and with an elite athlete, you're looking at let's get this right. Let's have the best supplementation program you can possibly have. Not forgetting that without the foundations, hydration, sleep, then nothing really performance-wise will really matter that much. And if we delve on the point of hydration, what we know now is different concentrations of drinks have got different rates of absorption. You can use the right concentration of drink for the right level of intensity of exercise, and you can look at multiple pathways for absorption for different types of sugar. And then if you're being clever, then you're going to be using things like cyclic dextrin would be an integral part of your hydration / carbohydrate replenishment protocol. And if you go another level in, then you'd be looking at the right kind of aminos to complement the carbohydrates within those type of drinks. So let's have a look at, you could call him an elite. He's certainly trains like an elite athlete. The type of effect you can get from 3 months of the right kind of nutrition, the right kind of supplementation, the right kind of training program. I trained with him, so I knew that he was training at the right type of intensity, with the right loads, with the right exercises, with the right combinations of exercises, strength curve wise, position of flexion wise, the right balance of rehab, flexibility, and so on and so forth. So you can get really elite level results when you get these protocols right. So I'm asking you really this, these are the types of questions that you will get asked as a performance nutrition practitioner. What do I need? Do I even need these things? And ideally you've tested, you've done a needs analysis based on detailed feedback from your interview process, and you can begin to fix the 20% things which give you the 80% benefit. The advice you give can often be quite basic compared with the analysis you're doing. So one thing we'll come on and talk about in series 2 is the body's insulin sensitivity measured via HOMA IR, and really health longevity is fundamentally governed by these systems which are involved in either a fed or fasted state. So we can elicit a lot of beneficial health prospects. We can get a lot of beneficial recovery prospects based on rates of absorption, types of food we choose to eat, amount of insulin we produce in relation to the foods that we eat, and how much insulin we want in the body in a 24-hour period. If we look at an extreme example, a 24 feeding protocol, i.e. warrior diet, then you can see that this is highly conducive to optimizing using fat for fuel. Simply put, the noise from insulin and sugar is reduced. You release more AMPK. You burn more fat. That also acts as an anti-catabolic enzyme, which is good when you have a seesaw and you maximize each phase. You tend to get a rebound effect, which we'll come on to more later on, but I just want you to think about that rebound anabolic effect. So how are we putting this together? Yeah, asking you lots of questions at the moment, giving you some solutions, helping you establish a base to become a better practitioner. So through a detailed assessment format, we would know optimum body composition, optimum energy demands, ideal substrate use at a certain period given based on the activity, Hall of Fame, personal best, personal preferences, and so on. If we apply this to recreational athlete, what we can see is 2-1-1 magic macros, 4 week protocol, 4 kilos of fat loss, 1.3 kilos of lean body mass, big drop in visceral fat. Typical results when you're getting this right. But we need to, this isn't an elite, so all this guy is doing, number one focus, body composition change. So what we want to do is see what the need is for an intensification of, say, carbohydrate loading strategies, and that will all depend on frequency of training. You see, the more you train, the more you're going to need these carbohydrate reloading. If you train 3 times a week, maybe you don't need to pay attention to what you might call sports nutrition. You can just eat in a very healthy Mediterranean semi-ketotic diet, get nice and lean and strong, and hopefully get loads of longevity benefits based on that method of eating. More frequently you train, the more you're going to need carbohydrate replenishment, and so I've established some of these tables for you to look at, so you can look at the type of thing I might be advising a client on. Grams of carbs, pre, intra, post, hydration, aminos, carbs, whether they're training for maximum performance, whether they're training for depletion, or whether they're training for maintenance. And these are the things I'm thinking about, but actually in terms of the advice, be looking at low, medium or high intensity recovery type matrix, and then also bringing in energy density, nutrient density type concepts and introducing these to the client. If we think back to supporting high intensity intermittent exercise, well, you'll remember from the earlier graph that is all about carbohydrates. As soon as you're training at above probably 60, 65, maximum of 70% fat max, it's been shown in the studies that you can't really burn energy more than that 70% of your maximum heart rate using fat for fuel, and that's high if you've trained it with specific protocols. So it's a carbohydrate dependent exercise. However, you can replenish carbs without eating carbs. So it all depends. you can replenish glycogen without eating carbohydrates. So it all depends on the frequency of training. So you remember back to that previous slide. So if we look at the energy systems, we're delving in a bit deeper. Fastest system, creatine phosphate, making creatine a highly useful supplement. Glycolysis, second fastest, will be down to blood glucose and muscle and liver glycogen. Then the aerobic system lasts forever. We're using the aerobic system right now, sat still, hopefully listening intently. And here's the reminder of those systems. That energy system, really, fat-based energy system, you could last for months. Most people can last for months off that, as long as they're sleeping and drinking water. Obviously, you'll get hungry, but it goes on and on and on. So, ATP is the energy currency of the cell. Your body will rebuild glycogen on its own. It can do that from fat and from protein, even your own body fat. If you take in a low carbohydrate diet and train high intensity, what will that do? Well, it will accelerate fat loss as a method of glycogen restoration. And so that's a fast method to get lean quickly, but you just have to be careful that you don't overtrain, because you'll be training in the depleted state. So you need to get enough recovery between your sessions in order to perform at your max and not get too tired. We measured these things with ultrasound. You'll get a 30% glycogen restoration just overnight, even if you just have a steak and a bit of rocket after a depletion session. So yeah, and the reason you can replenish glycogen via methods other than not eating carbs is because otherwise we'd all be basically dead, because no ATP, no survival. Okay, looking at another consideration around fat oxidation, and we're gonna look at carnitine when we talk about how to build a supplementation program in part 2. But the long and short of it is carnitine rocks as an ergogenic. So in and amongst this, a few bits of education. We're gonna be educating athletes, clients on the right kind of heart rate to train at, so they know which energy system they're maximizing. We're going to be looking at different substrate uses as a percentage of calorie intake to maximize metabolic efficiency, metabolic flexibility. And it's surprising even now, some people, you introduce these concepts to them and they're relatively new. But they need to be well understood. So what we can see once we've enhanced energy system efficiently is we need to be thinking about other things, other systems, neural, oxygen kinetics, blood flow, nitric oxide boosters, and so on and so forth. So sort of paving the way and also helping you delve in a bit deeper. We spoke about the body systems before, and hopefully this is enabling you to differentiate and see what we're looking at in terms of why we might use a particular substance at a particular time. You can see here again the energy systems and how well we can produce energy, and then what systems are going to need to be enhanced and supported, and how we can do that with different natural supplementation. So good. So hopefully feeling a little bit of the magic and feeling a little bit of the concepts which have got proven efficacy across 25 years of working with elite athletes at the highest level of elite sport. So let's have a little run through. I might skip through these next few slides quite quickly, but they're there for your reference. Glycogen, an important cellular mechanism. When you deplete it, you switch on AMPK, and you can actually take in quite moderately high levels of carbohydrates with the right level of training and still be semi-ketotic and enjoying the benefits of the AMPK system. Your body will make it, like I said. This is how your body makes it. It just makes it slower if you're not eating it. But if you've got time, then you can afford to be on a moderately low carbohydrate diet, particularly as a recreational athlete, and even in some cases, depending on the sport and the nature of the sport, of course, you can get away with that type of diet if you have to have a high level of muscle mass and you're not expending huge amounts of energy that are glycogen dependent. Then that's going to be the best way for you to go. If you're in a high intensity intermittent sporting type activity, you don't eat enough carbs, you're gonna crash and burn. This is why football, rugby, it's really important that the carbohydrate loading is done in the right way, at the right efficiency and the right timing. We hold different stores. One of the most important things around this is, well, maximize your stores before you go into battle. Maximize your stores before you go into battle. Vitally important. This is also something that I speak about on almost a daily basis, because this will really influence body mass just by substrate. Each gram of carb is stored with 3 grams of sugar. So you can see there, 500, 650, times that by 4. That's how many grams of weight differentiation you can get in a 24-hour period. So important to note, because otherwise people jump on the scales and they say, oh my god, I've gained so much fat, or oh my god, I've lost so much body fat, and really they haven't. They've just been either depleting, underfeeding and so on, or they're just dehydrated. So when we start looking at how maximizing glycogen stores, we can see I distilled this from quite a few papers on carbohydrate replenishment, and you can see the best carbohydrate reloading strategies here that you can employ. The main thing to say about this is these are the ones which incur maximum performance, but they're also maybe at times the wrong message, because they green light. And whenever I've tried to integrate strategies like this, the universal feedback is it's just too much. It's too much to eat, unsustainable. Not even unsustainable, you just can't do it. So, well, in terms of coaching, maybe relax that in terms of emphasizing certain food groups and looking at red, amber and green days. And it's a really good method of education, actually, because you can show the guys, this is how you eat on a Saturday, fueling pattern, 2 games a week, this is how you eat. You've got all the different food groups to emphasize. It's really a nice way for people to understand the concept around carbohydrate loading. Also reinforcing the fact that if they don't restore glycogen, then you're going to crash and burn. This has been known for years and years and years. Yeah, that study's a little bit older than I am. Calorie balance can be manipulated, and carbohydrate balance here. So you've got a high carb breakfast 500 calories. You've got a low carb breakfast, 500 calories. Higher protein, good protein, but much more carbs, low fat, quite high fat, and so on. So you can take the same calories, 2 different breakfasts, 2 completely different effects on insulin and muscle mass. Nutrient partitioning effects will be different. So sometimes call these the power breakfast and the performance breakfast. Power because you're sustaining more muscle, performance because you're reloading more glycogen. Power breakfast, performance breakfast. Simple concepts, easy to understand, excellent feedback in the team environment, maximizes a carb strategy that players can understand. Examples of different carbohydrates will be provided. The carbohydrate amounts in different foods will be provided. And then the whole template can be built into a weekly approach, knowing in the background that these are the type of carbohydrate levels that you need depending on the type of sport that you're going to pursue. So good. So I think that's almost like an extra section on carbohydrate loading. We're just coming up to the 30-minute mark, and I wanted to keep these discussions at 30 minutes. So I'll just leave you with a little look at the substrate used in certain running differences in running events. Very important to understand these, and then we'll wrap that up, and we're going to look next into more detail around insulin and other strategies around carbohydrate loading, insulin mimetics, and so on. Thanks for listening.